Halfland, an ahistorical prehistory. A tussle in the trees. In the northeastern corner of Halfland, a range of wooded hills marched down to the sea, and atop one of those hills, overlooking the ocean, hemmed in by the forest, was a village. In this village lived a community of wood folk. They led a simple life, hunting and foraging in the woods, and occasionally fighting with the warriors of any neighbouring village that infringed upon their territory. In the 153rd year of the Common Reckoning, the monotony of their existence was disturbed. An elven fleet sailed along the coast. The villagers were not seafarers. The appearance of a great number of large ships was a cause of wonder and excitement, which turned to fear and anger when the ships put into land on a beach at the foot of the hill, only a couple of miles from the village. The headman of the village was grey-bearded Langamar. A crowd soon gathered around him, looking for leadership. Some of them wanted to run inland and hide in the hills. Others wanted to sally down to the beach and kill all of the incomers. Voices were raised. Langamar calmed them. He urged patience and caution. The elves were many. They far outnumbered the villagers. Attacking them would surely be suicidal. And the elves' intentions were unknown. Maybe they had simply put in for water and would sail on once they had refilled their casks. The leading warrior in the village was Gadaros. Langamar instructed him to select a few hand-picked men and head down the hill to observe the elves and report back on their movements. Gadaros selected 8 men to follow him. There was his trusty companion, Rakaris. There was the hunter, Erulf, with his dogs. And there were 6 experienced warriors, with swords on their hips, shields in their left hands, and a bundle of javelins in their right. Gadaros and 3 of the warriors cautiously crept through the trees. To his right, Rakaris and the remaining 3 warriors did likewise. To his left were Erulf and his dogs. Erulf had trained his dogs to track and kill whatever quarry he set them on. In their time they had hunted deer, boars, bears, and men. The elven fleet was commanded by Fulman Broadleaf. As his ships sailed along the coast, he had seen the village of the woodfolk atop the hill. He decided to pay it a visit, intending to learn about the land and its inhabitants, and barter for provisions. Leaving the bulk of his people to make camp on the beach, he set off up the hill with 9 companions. His party was in a holiday mood, not expecting any trouble. Most of them were unarmoured and unarmed, except for hunting bows, which they carried in case they had an opportunity to bring down a deer for dinner. Merrily the elves climbed the hill, unaware of the woodfolk, stealthily advancing through the trees. The elves halted, unsure of the path to take. Fulman and a few others went on ahead a few paces, looking at the lie of the land, assessing the options, and then abruptly halted. A movement out to his right had caught Fulman's eye. It was Erulf and his dogs, glimpsed between the trees. Unsure of what they had seen, the elves reached for their bows. Gadaros observed this, and, concerned that Erulf and his dogs might be shot, he and his warriors burst from cover, screaming ferociously and hurling javelins at the bemused elves. Even as Fulman shouted orders to fall back, 2 of his companions, were dead. But now the elves did fall back, out of javelin range, joining those who had waited behind, and a line of elven archers loosed a volley of arrows at Gadaros and his men, killing one of the woodfolk and driving the others back into the trees. No sooner had one threat been dealt with than another appeared. Errolf came to Gadaros' aid, and a slavering pack of dogs came howling down the hill, charging toward the elven right. Again elven bowstrings sang, and one of the dogs tumbled lifeless onto the leaf-littered forest floor. But the others still came on, and now on the elven left, Rakaris and his warriors emerged from the trees, rushing toward the elven line. That was not all. In the centre, Gadaros rallied his surviving warriors to him, ready to attack. But Falmon kept his nerve. Rakaris and his band were met by a hail of archery, stopping his charge in its tracks. The elves then switched targets to Gadaros and his two remaining warriors, who had come rushing out of the trees in support of Rakaris. That was the end of Gadaros, pierced by no less than 3 elven arrows. And the elves loosed yet more arrows, and yet more woodfolk, and yet more dogs died. None of them reached the elven line. Errolf called his dogs back to him and melted back into the forest, and the few surviving warriors fled back up the hill through the trees. Falmon discarded his plan of paying the locals a visit. He and his 7 surviving companions headed back to the beach and their ships, and the elves sailed on. Thus ended the tussle in the trees.